I just want to highlight that sometimes the coronary hardware can be, life-saving, as it's been shown that the handmade wires were. So this was one patient who had, post-pancreatitis, and he was quite sick. He was shifted to our emergency in the cardiology department with a pre-diagnosis of pseudoaneurysm in relation to SMA. And there was, because of his hemoglobin was quite low and he was quite sick, so we didn't have much time to, find out the hardware. So we directly took him to the cath lab. And this is, I'm just brought this film. There was a large pseudoaneurysm in relation with SMA. We didn't have the hardware at that time. The idea was, because it has a very broad neck, so the idea was it needed a covered stent of that same size, which was not available. So whatever available was, we had, the two covered coronary stents were available. So we thought that there is no other option left at that time. We thought that let's deploy those. This is a 7 French renal guide, and we put a, routine PTCA wire through the pseudoaneurysm in the SMA. These were the hardwares. We deployed 2 covered stents overlapping, and then subsequently, because the size was a mismatch, we had one 6 into 20 millimeter peripheral balloon, which we post-dilated with the stents, and we were lucky enough to have the good final results. Pseudoaneurysm was covered and there was no active bleed subsequently. We put the patients on antiplatelets subsequently, and corrected his hemoglobin, and patient is quite okay now. There was no major mesenteric, because of vessels compromised, there was no major necrosis. The patient is all.
Which covered stents were these?
Yes, sir.
Which covered stents?
There was pro-covered stents, sir. 4 into
Pro-covered stents. Yeah, one of the concerns about...
Because SMA is a 6 millimeter.
We deployed at very high pressure, around 18 or 20. We were lucky, yes. Patient was lucky because there was no other option at that time.
Because, obviously it's undersized, and when you pull out the balloon and try to put the next one, there's a very high chance of everything going down.
And Bishop, the other thing is that there's a concern of extending it to 6 millimeters. Certainly, there's some concern of extending that stent to 6 millimeters and its integrity not being maintained. Options, of course, are that you actually use a peripheral self-expanding covered stent of any sort, which would actually be longer in length and larger in diameter, except that you wouldn't have got it to your guiding catheter, and you would have needed a direct stent implantation in those situations.
Actually, the ideal covered stent, this would be the Gore's wire band, because it will track well. You have a 3-5 wire, you see fantastic support, and the deployment is as good like any other stent, because the SMA actually tapers. Right? It comes from something close to 7.5, and within the next 3 centimeters will taper down to 6.5. So
a wire band, a self-expanding wire band would be very
good. Great stent if you could have it, but like you said, at this point,
and it's also expensive.
Yeah, beautiful. It's expensive, very expensive.
Yeah, I do agree, but
that one stent would have, just one stent. Yes. I mean, I'm just talking about what would be the ideal
possibilities. Yes.
Like this, Gore. From Gore, it's called a wire band. Yeah. I mean, in this situation, see, suppose it was in another location, maybe he would have changed it. But in this place, the ideal one. But what he's done, finally, he's got a very good result. And in a way, he was lucky because he was using, I think he used a 4 mm stent, you said.
Yes, 4 mm.
When you use a 4, it comes on a 4 mm balloon. So it's undersized for the vessel. There's, even by the time you deflate and you take the next balloon, you find the whole thing migrating down. See, this didn't happen.
And I think one of the relevant points you're making is the fact that because you telescoped one stent into the other, I think you did that. That's what you did. And if you've got an under-expanded stent, you again have a bigger problem of migration because you're telescoping one into the other. One of the ways, another way to do, Bishop, to do this is to actually put a larger size stent across, a bare metal stent across it, so that you actually have a tube already in place, and then start putting in your covered stents within that tube. And you then don't have the issue about telescoping, movement, and so on, because you've actually got a tube covering it, and you're just placing stents within the tube itself.
Well, the thing is that if you put a stent, you can modify the neck. And then you actually have a narrow neck, because, I mean, if you want to, there are different ways to do it, but the best answer is a covered stent in this location.
Right.
See, the covered stent, we are not expected to stretch it beyond a point because, so if we stretch coronary 4 mm stent with a 6 mm
Take it
balloon,
to 6, it can tear and we can
yeah,
have
I mean, you can create lots of problems.
I agree. This is not the norm, but this is what.
Yeah,
is,
I mean, at the end of the meeting, when we leave
I
home,
do
I
agree.
don't want people to get
Yeah.
a meaning that we can put a 4-0 stent into an artery which is 6 plus.
The thing,
So-
you may have a bigger disaster because what can happen, the stent migrates down, you occlude more vessels and
Yeah.
but I guess he was very lucky.
Besides, these are so freely available. I mean, you can wait for 1 or 2 days, you can get what you want.
But he said he was unstable, bleeding.
It was quite. You can see the hemodynamics. So his heart rate was 140,
Yeah, I
160
think
at
he
that
had a
time. Pressure was
problem
80.
there.
It was just a touch and go. He's having little acidosis. So we thought let's try that.
Yeah, there can be other simpler option. I think if somebody has done it, I have done it once. You put a bare metal stent across the pseudoaneurysm, then dilate one of the stent which is going to the pseudoaneurysm, put your catheter, any simple catheter can go through the stent, and fill the pseudoaneurysm with coils. So that way you will save side branches, you will not undersize the stent, and you can effectively do this.
Yeah, but one thing, if you put coils into an aneurysm like this, you don't cure the procedure. After 1 year, you'll find that the neck has again grown. A stent graft is the modality of choice in a location which is proximal. If it was more distal, you can do like what the previous speaker did, trap the vessel. If you want to, people used to do this about 15 years, 18 years back. We used to put a stent, modify the neck and put coils across it. But it never works. 1 year later, you find the whole thing has grown. The coils are pushed to one corner. So the ideal thing is a stent graft. I think we should, if the message that has been taken home, the ideal thing is a stent graft. It will be good if you can plan it, use the right sizes. But otherwise, I think it's a beautiful procedure.